Hello, and welcome to this presentation titled Freedom's Cause. My name is Stephen Smith, and this is part 1 of Vignette number 15, titled Total Inclusion. At the close of Vignette number 14, titled The Fall of Freedom, you are shown how the lie seeks to establish an unwholesome definition of what it means to have a proper adult national mindset, that it is composed of two segments. The first being the right to partake of addictive goods and services that are put forth as adult sources of entertainment, so long as you do so void of threatening the security of others. The second portion being the right of all to security of life and property, no matter the form in which they establish their adult sexual identity, in that all are to be upheld in having the legal right to be lawfully licensed in whatsoever sexual identity they choose. That the first form of security comes into place as a means to end the nationwide crime spree being carried out by addicts. This being accomplished by replacing America's Declaration of Independence with one of security, as only thereby can laws be enacted by which addicts can be quickly brought under control. The second form of security comes into place as a means to end the nationwide violence generated mostly by members of fundamentalist religions through their ongoing opposition to people being able to establish and live in accordance to their gender of choice. This accomplished by all churches being brought under strict governmental supervision, thereby ending the principle of separation of church and state. By the first form of security, people lose their inalienable right to have the freedom to acquire happiness. By the second, they lose their inalienable right to acquire happiness in their freedom. Both of these inalienable rights lost due to the lie's capacity to beguile the general populace into unwittingly setting aside their inalienable right to govern themselves by adhering unto the dictates of one's conscience. For once people are denied the capacity to grow in their maturity by so adhering, it allows the lie to rapidly solidify its hold over a nation. For where the laws of the land no longer uphold people in having the inalienable right to seek out and follow the truth, most find they lack the courage to do so. As they soon learn, the power of the state rapidly and mercilessly comes to bear on any and all who attempt to do so, starting with those who display the courage to defend addicts and or those of strong religious convictions by means of the inalienable rights they once held under America's Declaration of Independence. For now that said declaration has no legal place in national law, it is impossible to uphold any in having said rights by the Constitution of the United States, as now it is via said Constitution that all are denied access to these rights. Thus, when faced with this form of state power, most quickly develop strong survival instincts, ones based upon self-deprecating, as this wins for them the approbation of their rulers. The lie uses this all too human and deeply ingrained instinct to look after one's own self-interest as the means by which it can gain an unobstructed pathway in its capacity to reign. Well, mostly unobstructed, as there are always those courageous few that refuse to meekly submit, as these are they who, like the Good Samaritan, put the interests of another before their own. Yet though such strive to oppose what is transpiring, it avails them not save imprisonment or death. Thereby, one by one, these individual, courageous lights of conscience are extinguished. In this, it is also to be recognized, large numbers throughout society will actively support these changes, do so as their lifestyle is in full accord with the doctrine of total inclusion. Thus, what others see as a loss of freedom, they view as the mature adult means by which all are upheld in their inalienable rights. For as this process unfolds, all licensed news services quickly learn the job of the mass media is to sustain all government edicts, else be subject to arrest for seeking to stir up sedition and thereby endanger the general security of the nation's citizenry. Yet again, it is to be recognized, due to their personal lifestyles, large numbers within the mass media have for years championed these changes and thus view them in a positive light. As this overall mindset of prompt subservience under the dictates of the state takes hold, this allows the lie to move forward and fulfill the next portion of its plan. Do so by acquiring the strident emotional backing for an all-inclusive list of environmental laws from the nation's populace. For all truths the government condemns, the general populace now condemns. Lies the government condones, the general populace condones. For the leaders of said movement will publicly and vehemently demand the enactment of these strict laws, stating they are desperately needed, as only thereby can the earth's natural environment be given time to heal. Only thereby can its ongoing security be fully and continuously guaranteed. But said laws will have nothing to do with protecting the environment. Rather, their sole purpose will be to expand and tighten that grip which the laws of security already have upon the nation. For the demands being made will be presented by recognized members of the mass media displaying their exuberant support for said laws. For they will state, if the planet is to be saved, accepting the vital need for said laws is the mature national mindset all must develop. The general populace will soon realize the government is allowing the mass media to carry on in its support of said laws, even as it grows ever bolder by calling for the general public to quickly, vehemently, and publicly sustain said movement. By this means, the illusion that freedom of the press is still alive is maintained. An illusion, as people will also know, as the government is allowing said movement to voice its demands, then for their own ongoing security, it is best they publicly step forth and vehemently sustain said movement. Thus, this illusion of growing spontaneous support from members of the mass media and general populace will take hold, seemingly causing the government to yield and state that by the voice of the people it has come to recognize the fundamental need for said laws to be enacted. As said laws come into place, this will engender within people a sense of emotional euphoria. For once the government gives way, this will cause an emotional release from the very real apprehension they feel. The fear their support of said movement could result in harsh ramifications, as they are acting void of stated government approval. However, and as noted, these laws will have nothing to do with protecting the environment, as under the guise of doing so, they endow those covetous sycophants who have gained control of said movement with governmental authority, that which they require so they can take over the management of all farms, the fishing and forestry industry, heavy and light industrial complexes, trucking firms, etc., until they control every aspect of private enterprise. I would have you note, this does not mean they will take over ownership of the forestated businesses. Instead, members of said movement will hold the final say in regards to how all the forestated operate. Thereby, the environmental movement will obtain a direct share in the profits generated by these businesses, while leaving people with yet another illusion, this time that free enterprise is still in place. But for the earth to be protected from pollutants, it is now needful free enterprise functions under far closer supervision. While the need for businesses to turn over a chunk of their profits to said movement, this would be put down to the cost associated with healing the planet and providing it with ongoing security. Under the guise of protecting the planet, heightened additional personal taxes will also be established, thereby restricting to a far greater degree what and how much people can purchase, the amount and type of wastage each household can generate. Thus, unlike communism, those who control the government and those who control the national resources will function under two separate and distinct headings. Those who govern will function under the heading of state, while those who control the nation's resources will function under the unrecognized heading of church. For the environmental movement will legitimize itself before the general public as a spiritual entity via associating itself with the concept of protecting Mother Earth. It is to be noted, the nomenclatures of church and state will not be appropriate, as the lie will have turned them upside down. For under the doctrine of total inclusion, the state will establish laws that control a person's capacity to pursue after happiness. Do so by presenting the teachings associated with the church, a doctrine of happiness. One, however, that is based upon a lie, being the sexual and addiction cultures all must adhere unto, while by the doctrine of the new religion, strict environmental laws will be established which impact upon people's inalienable right to life and liberty. By means of these two interrelated sets of laws, the lie will impose a corrupt doctrine of freedom. For under this twisted form of democracy, it will appear to the general populace that neither church nor state holds the capacity to usurp the authority of the other. By said means, people will be further beguiled into believing the illusion that they still live in a democracy, as via the auspices of environmentalists, people will be told the authority of the government is not absolute, while by the auspices of the government, they will be told the authority of the environmentalists is not absolute. Whereas the real truth will be, out of their need to establish a working relationship, the lie will compel both organizations to establish the means by which they can cooperate, a process that shall transpire after that manner by which all such sycophant, guile-based organizations have and continue to operate, being via a secret society. In regards to the previous, I have repeatedly warned, if you refuse to receive of the undeniable truths had herein, to sustain them by adhering unto the dictates of your conscience. The time is not overly distant when the lie will strip you of your lawful capacity to so adhere. Do so by overthrowing your Declaration of Independence. Now, if the day comes when said declaration falls, can it be expected you will stand forth then and look to defend it? No, it is unreasonable to expect this. For if you refuse this day to stand forth as a citizen in opposition to the doctrine of total inclusion, when in relative safety said declaration endows you with the means to do so, how is it to be expected you will do so when said declaration no longer exists, when the doctrine of total inclusion is licensed and upheld by those corrupt laws associated with your newly established declaration of security, making virtually any opposition you present a breach of the law and thus extremely dangerous? I have warned and forewarned that if, as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you ignore what I am stating, if instead you feel that as a good law-abiding citizen you can wait out the harsh issues of the day, do so by hunkering down within the confines of the church until the Lord returns and resolves all the world's problems. Then I ask you, between then and this day, how is it you imagine the large number of temple marriages, those of your own family members ending in divorce, are going to be resolved? How is it you imagine the large number of members walking away from the gospel, including members of your family, are going to be resolved? How is it you imagine the harsh issues associated with the growing number of members who are becoming addicted, members of your own family who are becoming addicted, are going to be resolved? Indeed, you fail to recognize these issues have placed you in a state of despair, nor do you recognize the form your despair takes. For you call said despair your belief in the Lord's return, as on that day all these issues will be resolved, and your present sorrows shall be turned into lasting joys. By said attitude you remember, salvation does come by the Lord's charity. But you conveniently forget, this is granted unto those who first do all they can, and in regards to said issues, you have thus far refused to do all you are capable of. For you refuse to step forth as a patriot and resolve these issues in like manner as slavery and segregation were ended, by a broad national, not a unique church solution. Thus, if you do hunker down, these harsh issues which presently exist amongst church members will only grow far worse in severity. For when this storm of events ends and your Declaration of Independence is replaced by one of security, when thereby addicts are brought under control and separation of church and state is no more, when the turmoil created during this period of transition finally calms down, you will find your great democracy will be no more. For a new form of political leadership will arise, one that will state the turmoil that transpired within society over the sexual and addiction cultures was due to the marked political differences between the Republican and Democratic parties. State the leaders within each party used their opposing beliefs as a means to divide people into two distinct and overtly hostile political camps. State Americans can no longer afford the luxury of having two political parties, as they constantly vie with one another by such unscrupulous means in order to garner public support. Do so while holding few qualms over how bitter their rivalry becomes, thereby showing they hold scant concern over the negative effect their unwarranted conduct has upon America's citizenry, how via it they undermine the overall security of the American people. Thus, to prevent political turmoils of this nature from ever transpiring again, it is needful Americans unite as one people under the heading of a single and new party, thereby rendering void the capacity for such issues to ever again undermine the overall security of America's people. Do so by splitting them into two opposing and overtly hostile political camps, thus alleviating the need for any further national elections, as all who qualify can join the new party and freely partake in how they would have the nation run. By means of this form of rhetoric, diverse political leaders will join in this call for a single party, while those who oppose its establishment will be humiliated. For it will appear such seek to license ongoing, overtly hostile turmoil across the American political landscape. Thus, once the single party state comes into being, those who continue to stand forth in opposition to it shall be degraded, as the general public will be told. Their rhetoric is highly dangerous, as via it they seek to stir up the overtly hostile political turmoil the new party is sanctioned to prevent. Therefore, to guarantee the ongoing security and general well-being of all, it is needful these political dissidents are silenced. This transpiring before they can cause Americans to once more fall into two politically hostile camps. By this means, the leaders of the new party will silence all who oppose them by arresting, jailing, and, if need be, executing their political opponents. All this transpiring, as the leaders of the new party shall state, they function in strict accordance to America's Declaration of Security, in that they function by means of additional amendments being made unto America's long-established Constitution. As for any amendments to said Constitution that have to be rescinded, said political leaders will simply state, it is to be recognized, this is transpiring in line with the 18th Amendment, that which established prohibition, in that, by the removal of said amendment, it is to be recognized, not all amendments function in accordance with the maturity required of the American people, as those who established the 18th Amendment tried, via means of America's Constitution, to impose an unnatural form of maturity upon the American people, one that stands in direct and total opposition to the mature national mindset that this day all are upheld in exercising the usage of said products, as long as in their so doing a person does not threaten the security of others. Thus, the long-forgotten chickens will have come home to roost, for all of this shall transpire due to the refusal of those Utah-based members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to properly heed the counsel of the prophet, President Heber J. Grant. For again, if only one member had taken to heart said counsel, if only one had displayed the maturity they were capable of, and asked this simple question of God, how does my voting to sustain said amendment uphold all in their inalienable rights? Then so many of our sorrowful yesterdays would never have transpired, and this day our tomorrows would look far brighter. This brings us to a close of part 1 of vignette number 15, titled Total Inclusion. Again, I thank you for your time, and hope as you have listened, you have felt of the Spirit. As for the principles unfolded herein, I solemnly testify that they are true, and do so in the sacred name of Jesus Christ. Amen.